Hey everybody, it is Her Royal Geekness Rights, and today I will be giving you a tutorial of Scrivener 3. Recently released to the Windows platform, Scrivener 3 offers some changes and some new functionality that Scrivener previously didn't offer. So what we're going to be going through today is the user interface, how to navigate the new look of the program and some of the new features that it offers. Binder functionality, which is basically how do you set up your project, what does setting up your project look like. Setting up your styles, which is the appearance of your text as you're working. Tools and helpful features is our grab bag of things that didn't really fit under other headers. And then finally, we'll be looking at the compiler. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is user interface. Okay, welcome to Scrivener 3. Mine looks a little bit different than yours might, but that's because I've actually changed my theme, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. So one thing you'll notice is that there's a lot of buttons and menus and confusing stuff like that. Thankfully, the people at Literature and a Latte actually gave us like mouse over like rollover tips. But what do they mean? How do you use them? It's all a really confusing mess. So let's start with the 3 shiny buttons at the top right here. These are your 3 views, essentially, of your binder. So let's start with number 1, which is viewing your subdocuments as scrivenings. So one thing you'll see is these dotted lines. Each dotted line indicates a new subdocument. So my first subdocument, which is right here, is the header known as Outline in 4 acts based on Maggie Stiefvater's writing course. My second would be Act 1. Maybe in Act 1 I need to put down some notes to myself saying, okay, this is what I need to accomplish in this act. The main thing I use it for is seeing kind of a progression of my outline. So here is the Chapter 1 notes. Introduce character, introduce conflict, introduce main setting. You may not do all of that in your first chapter, and that's totally fine, but this is just sort of an example. Every dotted line, like I said, it denotes a new scrivening, so each thing is a separate. So you'll see in Act 1, I have 10 scrivenings. Well, I have 10 subheaders. So you'll see here, I have 10 subdocuments. Each one has its own section when I look at it in the scrivening view. The second view is known as the corkboard view. This one is really useful because if you're someone who really likes note cards for organizing your thoughts and sort of your outlines, this is the digital version of it. In the outline, like in the overhead outline, you'll see each folder has its own section. So like say you suddenly realize, oh, Act 3 is actually my Act 2. I can drag and drop Act 3 and put it where Act 2 was. Now I'm not going to do that right now because I don't have anything written. So we're just going to assume that my Act 3 actually ends up where it needs to be. But you can also do that within a chapter itself. So say you're like, oh, my chapter 3, it's within an act. Oh, my chapter 3 is actually like my chapter 6. I really need to reorganize that. Again, the drag and drop feature makes it so, oh, well, now chapter 3 is my chapter 6. Again, super useful if you're like a very like visual and like also like kinetic person when it comes to like how you organize your thoughts and your writing. I use it a lot in the outlining stage, as you can tell. This is a template that I actually made to sort of organize my crazy writing thoughts, which we'll go over in a little bit. The last, but not least, view that you have is the outliner. This will give you so much information about your writing, not only in the outline section of a template, but in the main manuscript, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But here you see your title and your synopsis. So Act 1, what is the synopsis? I don't know yet. I haven't written it. Labels. These are important because I can be like, all right, what labels? We have red, orange, yellow, but you can also edit labels, which is custom metadata, and labels. So say I want red to be problematic writing situation. I don't know. We'll just say yes. Problematic writing situation. Hopefully yours will be a little bit more eloquent and informative. But now it says, my label says, problematic writing situation. Okay, that's really useful. Status. This is useful when you are tracking multiple draft versions. So like, is it a to-do? Is it in progress? Is it a first draft, a revised draft, a final draft? Done. You can also add other statuses. Section type. It's a section. All right, well, what do you mean by a section? You can actually create different section types. Also, you can change how much information the outliner view gives you. So if we go to view and we go to outliner options, it gives you all of these choices of things that can pop up when looking at something in an outliner view. So do I want to see my total word count? That could be really useful if you're revising, right? Like, because certain genres have certain word count restrictions. Not that you can't write above or below them, but, you know, general guidelines. Targets. Have I met my target for this chapter, for this act? Do I know how many words I have left I have to write? All of these things allow you to customize how much you see or don't see. So like, say you don't find statuses useful. You just click off and it's gone. And that's really useful. That way you're not overwhelmed with information. So I actually find status useful, but I don't find section type useful. Because ultimately, for this, I don't care about the section type. I just want to know, all right, if I'm in Act 1, oh, my first chapter is actually a problematic writing situation. And I need to know it's in my to-do, right? That's another useful thing, is you can actually click on your status and change it right from the outliner. All right, so next up, we're going to look at the inspector. The inspector is kind of like, I don't want to say it's your cheat notes, but it's an easy way to keep track of things that you don't necessarily want to throw into its own separate document, but is important to knowing. It's important stuff to know about either a subfolder or a scene or a chapter. So synopsis, Act 1. Introduce the main character, develop relationship with reader, prepare for introduction of main conflict / going into the world. Okay, so that's my synopsis of what Act 1 should do, right? Here are any notes. So like, say I want this one really particular scene to happen in Act 1, but I don't know where I want to put it. This would be a place to put it. Important scene. You also have the ability to put document bookmarks, which we'll get into in a little bit. Custom metadata. This is useful for searching things in your text. I don't personally use it a ton, only because it gets really, I want to say it gets really tedious. Tedious is probably the word I'd use. So keywords might be useful. So like romance, like, let's see, let's do primary romance. Okay, that's one of my keywords. So now if I have a scene where I know that the protagonist and their love interest are interacting together, I might say, all right, I'm going to throw a keyword on here so I can find all of my scenes that have romance, have the primary romance in them. Or say I want to, primary conflict. Okay, again, is this where the main character is interacting with the conflict that they have to resolve? This is sort of what I'm talking about. These are things that can be useful for finding. This is more of a doing the work early, so then when you go back to revise, it becomes a little bit easier. Whether you use them or not, that's totally up to you, but it is a helpful feature if that's sort of how your brain processes writing. So the next thing we have is snapshots. Snapshots are useful because it allows you to compare two different points in the document's lifespan, I guess would be the word for it. So right now, this is what my Act 1, Chapter 1 outline card looks like. Okay, those are some okay chapter notes, but let's say All right, I'm going to create a snapshot. So this is our starting point. And say, all right, I don't like this. This is just it's too general. It's not helpful for me. So I'm going to say Mia, which is the character in a book I might be writing for NaNoWriMo. Mia comes into the village on animal back. Determine what said animal looks like. Village name needs to be determined because I don't know what that village is going to be called. Describe the solar punk atmosphere of this village on Marialta. Mia interacts with a member of her guard team. Now, none of this means anything to any of you, right? You don't know what my project is about. I'm not entirely sure I know what my project is about. But this is these are more detailed notes, right? Like they're more specific. So we'll take another snapshot. So more specific details. Oh, gotta capitalize. More specific details. Okay, so if we compare these two, you'll see I got completely rid of all of this stuff and added all of this stuff. But that's a pretty big comparison jump, right? We just deleted a bunch of stuff and then we completely filled in new stuff. So let's say I want to make a more subtle change. So Mia comes into the village on a pack animal that resembles a buffalo. Village name needs to be determined. Look at Star Wars for influence. I don't know if I'll actually use Star Wars. Probably won't. But now let's make a new, even more specific details. All right, so now I want to compare these two. And it shows you down here. All right, I got rid of animal back to determine what that animal looks like. I changed it to a pack animal that resembles a buffalo. And here I added village name needs to be determined, but I add look at Star Wars for influence. But I did not change describe the solar punk atmosphere of the village on Marialta or Mia interacting with a member of her guard team. This is more of a tool that you would end up using when you revise, right? It's just easier to look and be like, all right, what did I change? Or I'm not sure I actually want to change this. Let me make sure I have a snapshot of the original so I have the option of rolling it back. So if I say I don't like I don't like the even more specific details, I think they're stupid, I can hit the rollback button. And look, it's all back to where it was. Super useful. Down here, you're going to see your labels. I'm going to take off the writing label. You also have your status. So say I finish this, I'm like, oh, nice, I'm done with my chapter 1 outline. I can put it as a finished document. So that is the inspector. You also have comments and footnotes. If you need to make a note to yourself and being like, I hate this name, change it later, that's where you can put a comment. Super useful because sometimes when we're thinking to ourselves, I don't know what to call this brand of soda, or I don't know what to call this restaurant. You can just put it in brackets, restaurant name, and move on. But you might need to be like, oh, I need to change that. So that is the inspector. The last thing we're going to go as far as a UI overview goes is the composition mode. Now, I actually can't show you composition mode because it's actually a full screen view. But it's basically, if you're like me and you're easily distracted or constantly distractible, it's a full screen mode that blocks out everything behind it. Not useful if you're like me and you have 3 monitors, but if you're working on a laptop and you are prone to checking your Discord or your Facebook Messenger or, reading something random on a news site while you're trying to write, this is the mode for you. Also useful when you're trying to do sprints, which are very popular during during NaNoWriMo. So it's just a thing. It helps out. All right, so the next topic we're going to talk about is layouts. Layouts have been a feature of Scrivener since the original version of the program. However, with Scrivener 3, they've added some functionality. They have added a feature called copy holders. Copy holders they might be sort of foreign, but they are the arms or stands that you have that will hold up pieces of paper or documents or copies while you're working on something in the physical world. In Scrivener, what that looks like is additional windows. So let's say we're working on chapter 1. I have a Charles Dickens quote because I don't like looking at an empty document. And say, all right, I actually need to have my chapter 1 outline card available to me because I'm working on scene 1 of chapter 1 of act 1. All right, so there's 2 ways to jump into a split screen. One here, it says toggle split, alt-click to change split type. You probably can't read that on my screen because of the size, and it's not actually showing the tooltip. All right, that's fine, you'll just have to believe me. So if you hold it down, you can see that the icon changes to a horizontal split. If you let go, it changes to a vertical split. I prefer vertical splits because that's just how my brain works. You can also go up here to editor layout and have split horizontally, split vertically. Kind of useful. So, all right, we're going to split this, right? So now we have 2 documents open. They're both copies of chapter 1, which is not really useful to us because what are we going to do with 2 copies of the same chapter? So what we'll do is we'll actually go up here and we'll click, this is our Act 1, Chapter 1 outline card, and it brings it into focus over here. Okay, that's pretty useful, right? If you want to change what's going on in either of these windows, the best way I have found to do it on Windows, even though the functionality looks different if you look at the Literature and Latte tutorial video, is that you actually want to drag and drop into the header bars. So say we're in chapter 1. Oh, well, we finished chapter 1. We want to work on chapter 2. Drag and drop, it changes it to chapter 2. So then we just click over here, change it to chapter 2's card. That's super easy, right? So if you want to change your primary document, you need to drag and drop. If you want to change your secondary, you don't have to worry about that. Now for copy holders. So, okay, we're working on scene 1, chapter 1 of act 1. And we're like, oh, well, this is introducing my main character. I should probably have their profile available to me. The way that you bring up a copy holder is you actually hold down Alt on Windows, click the document you want to include, drag and drop it into your whichever pane you end up wanting to use. So if you want to have it on your left, you put it on the left. You want to have it on your right, put it on the right. That will bring up a copy holder window, which this is my character profile. So it allows me to know like her name, her age, everything like that. The difference between a copy holder window and a toggled split is that copy holder windows can be dismissed. You can close it right here. So say I'm like, all right, I don't need that anymore. Click, it's gone. So instead of say, I want my list of characters instead. List of characters. Bravissimo. Good job, right? So that's how copy holders work. And you can have, I believe, up to 4. I might be wrong with that number. 4. We're going to say 4. So say I do want my main character's profile. I hold Alt, drag and drop, and again, it'll bring up another copy holder window, which I can dismiss. That's the good thing about copy holders is they are easily edited. The only problem with the layout is that it can be a little bit finicky on Windows. It's not super intuitive, but like I said, if you want to change this, your secondary window, it's not an issue. You just click in the window, so you have this blue line right here to make sure it's selected, and then you just click what you want to put in. If you want to change your main window, again, just to reiterate, you need to drag and drop. So say I'm going to change to chapter 2 again. Drag, drop, it takes me to chapter 2. So that's how the layouts work. They also come with some default options, which can be useful depending on sort of like how you think through your writing. The one that I see a lot of people using is a 3-pane outline. So say you want your Act 1 right here. You want to have it in, this will tell you like everything you want to know about that. And then you want to have chapter 1. It allows you to click through this while also moving through the chapters that you're writing. It's another way of sort of doing what I was doing, but it just depends on what you need. And you can also go, using this version, you can go up and down through the levels of the files. So just be aware of that. You can play around with these, sort of see what you like, what you don't like. I've seen different people who prefer different styles. It just kind of depends on what you think is the most useful for your writing. The thing that people, now here's the last thing on the UI overview, and the thing that people are probably the most excited about with Scrivener 3 is that there are themes, meaning that you no longer have to be blinded by bright gray and white on your monitor when you're up at 2 a.m. working on a caffeine binge, finishing up the last of your words for a day. Not that any of us have ever done that before. So what you're going to do if you want to change your theme is you go to Window. Right here, there's a thing called Themes. You have the default, which is the bright, very bright gray and white that we're used to. There is dark mode. Dark mode's nice. We like dark mode. We all, with our blue light addicted eyes, we like dark mode. Then there are other ones that you can enjoy. There's gray matter dark, gray matter light, mellow yellow, ocean. You can see here I have solarized dark as my theme of choice at the moment. From this appearance, though I have not delved into it myself, it looks like you can actually go out into the internet, the wilds of the internet, and find themes and upload them for yourself. Maybe we'll try it someday. Today is not that day. So, this is an overview of themes. It's a super useful feature that they added to Scrivener 3, and I am very glad for it. The next thing we'll be working on is binder functionality and setting up your project. Okay. So binder functionality and setup. What do I mean by binder functionality? Well, when you look at Scrivener, over here on your left-hand side is your binder. That essentially means that this is what your project looks like. This is where you're going to find all of your manuscript items and possibly your outline. If that's where if you're not a pantser, if you're a plantser, or you're a planner even, this is where you're going to find stuff like your outline, your list of characters, settings and locations, that sort of thing. You don't have to necessarily have all of this stuff, but it's at least going to be where your manuscript is located. Now, let's start a new project. This is where I can go over the idea of templates with you. So, all right, so this is the window that pops up when you want to start a new project, right? This is all the sort of getting started stuff, some helpful stuff here, but not necessarily what we're going into. So when you look at all, that might be that's a lot of stuff, right? So blank is blank. Blank is what I'm going to use to show you how to do a couple of things. They also have fiction templates. This functional novel drafting template is what I created. The three kind of default ones are novel, novel with parts, and short story. The useful thing about using a Scrivener or a Literature and Latte provided template is that they do provide you with notes on how to use the template. You have nonfiction, everything from an essay to a paper to a research proposal. Script writing, you have everything from a radio drama to a stage play. Pretty useful. And miscellaneous. The three that are default are the recipe collection, the poem, and the persuasive lecture. I added the D&D template because I wanted to start writing my own campaign. So you can pretty much find a template for pretty much anything you're looking for on the internet. You just need to do a little bit of digging. And if you can't find the template you're looking for, you can make it. So let's go to blank. We're going to hit create and just make a Scrivener example project. Okay, so this is our example project. Let me expand the window a little bit so we're not juggling between two views. There we go. So when you do a blank document, a blank template, this is what it looks like. It doesn't give you much of anything. It gives you draft, research, trash, and one started document. That's it. Which it can be really helpful if that's what you need because you're starting a new template. But let's go over a couple things. First thing is, in order to rename your documents, you can just double click. So if I want to change this to scene 1, done. Now the way that you add folders and subdocuments are using these buttons down here. So if you click here, all right, so let's say we're in our draft and we're like, oh, I want to add an Act 1 folder because I'm splitting this up into acts. Well, that's good. But now we realize, oh, Scene 1 is above Act 1. What do we need to do? So one of the ways that you deal with hierarchy within the binder is you can actually just drag and drop, and it'll show you where it's showing up. So you see that white line behind the semi-transparent folder of Act 1? That shows me where it's going to end up. So now you can see Act 1 is on the same level of hierarchy as Scene 1. All right, well, do we want that? Do we not want that? Like, what are we doing? So what we can do is, all right, so we want another folder. We're going to do Chapter 1. Oh, well, crap. Now Chapter 1 is down below the trash. But again, we drag, but this time we want Chapter 1 inside of Act 1. So you'll see that there's a double ringed white line around Act 1. That means that Chapter 1 is going to end up inside of Act 1. And now you can barely see right there that there's a little arrow pointing down. When you expand that arrow, you see Chapter 1 is now inside of Act 1. All right, well, now we need to put Scene 1 inside Chapter 1. Again, drag and drop. And we expand Chapter 1 and see Scene 1 is here. So that's how you create sort of hierarchy within your binder. Now say we're like, all right, I want this to be Act 2. You only have you have one chapter act, but you're realizing that Act 2 is on the same level as Act 1. Uh-oh, what are we going to do about that? So we can actually go to Move To and hit Draft, and it'll actually bump it over into that hierarchy. Again, if we wanted to do Scene, let's say we're going to do Chapter 2. All right, well, number one, we don't want this to be Chapter 2. We want it to be Scene 2. But we also recognize that that's in the wrong spot. So we have two options. We can either do the Move To, which is here, then we go to Draft, then we go to Act 1, then we go to Chapter 1, or we drag and drop. But we see again, that's not the right level, so we need to make sure you see where the little dot is. Make sure it's underneath where you want it to end up in your hierarchy. So that's how the hierarchy kind of works within Scrivener. It's kind of really useful depending on how super specific you want to get with your project. If you're a planner, this will be great for you. If you're a planter, still really great. If you're a pantser, I don't understand how you do it, but good job on you. It can still be useful in the aftermath when you actually want to go through and organize your project and start doing revisions. The one thing to be aware of is that if you decide, all right, I don't like Scene 2, I just want to get rid of it altogether, you actually need to move it to the trash. So you can either click Move to Trash or you can drag and drop. Unfortunately, you can't just hit delete or the delete key or the backspace key and have it go away. You actually need to move it to the trash. And this is because it'll actually store your deleted information in the trash. So if you decide, oh wait, I actually did like what I wrote, it's still available for you to grab. So that is how binder functionality works. Like I said, you can get as specific or as general as you need. You can find the template of your dreams, or you can make one for yourself. Next up, we're going to be talking about setting up your styles and formatting your documents. Okay, so what do I mean by setting up your styles? I mean setting up the baseline formatting for your project. So if we go over to Scrivener, you'll see I'm in Scene 1 of Chapter 1 of Act 1 of my manuscript, and you'll see that my font is Times New Roman 12, no style, regular, with a 0.5-inch indent. And this is because I have an academic background, and that is the best way that I've found to get my brain on board with the whole writing thing, is to use a font that I find familiar and a font that I find easy to comprehend and easy to sort of organize in my head. And that's really the name of the game when it comes to using digital programs to do your writing in, is that you need to make it so it is the most efficient and easiest way for your brain to do the work of writing. But one of the ways you have to do is you have to actually set up your baseline formatting, because you don't want to have to keep changing for every document. All right, well, the base formatting is telling me I should be using Calibri, but I actually want to use Times New Roman, so every document I have to change that. That's not efficient. That's not useful. And actually, Scrivener will start having a stroke if you try and do that. So how do we do this? So what you're going to do is you're going to go up to File, Options, and it'll bring up this window, right? So it'll actually bring it up on the general thing. I had been looking at something earlier. This is your general options menu. So this is actually just stuff that you can futz with to make it so that it works best for you. Automatically quitting after an inactive period. So say you have kids and suddenly little Susie has flooded your bathroom upstairs and you've been inactive for 30 minutes, it'll automatically quit. So your cat, Roger, can't come and jump up on your keyboard and do some alphabet soup all over your project. One useful thing that I will point out while I'm here is the saving options. Number of recent projects is how many people, when you go in to create a new document or to open a recent project, that's how many it'll show. So 10 is sort of the default. Auto save after is the thing I'm going to emphasize the most. This is kind of, if you've worked with Microsoft Word at all, this will seem pretty familiar with you, or Google Docs. Google Docs is probably a better example. After you finish adding text or an image or a table to a Google Doc, it autosaves. This is the same idea. Scrivener will autosave after a certain period of inactivity. So say, all right, I need to sit back and I need to think about this scene because Mia, who's my main character, is being a pain in my butt. Well, it'll autosave. And that's really useful because shit happens during NaNoWriMo. Things that you could not predict will happen during NaNoWriMo. So saving after a certain interval of inactivity is really helpful. 2 seconds is the default. You can increase it, you can decrease it, whatever works best for you. The thing we're going to be concerned about right now is editing. Editing is the place where we need to look in order to change our formatting. Here are some general editing options. You can kind of go through and, see what everything does. But right now we want to go to the formatting tab. Now you'll see here, it's my formatting, right? Like we just talked about, Times New Roman, regular, size 12, with a 0.5 inch indent. Okay, that works. It also allows you to change your notes font, your inspector comments. I did not change the inline footnotes font for some reason, but you can also change that. So say you're one of the people who really likes Comic Sans. I can go here, forgive all of the numerous fonts that I have, and change my font to Comic Sans to make my brain work more cooperatively with me. So here we got Comic Sans. Now it's in Comic Sans, regular 12. Now I'm not going to save this because I would probably cry every single time I opened up my project. But you get the idea. This is where you set your baseline of what every document is going to look like unless you say otherwise. And the unless you say otherwise is where we get into the idea of styles. So let's hit cancel because no. Up here next to your font information, you'll see here it says no style. Styles are temporary changes to your formatting. So say you're writing a poetry collection and it needs a title after every single, you need a title for your poem at the top of the page, unless you're someone who doesn't title their poems, and then I guess that makes sense. Literature and Latte kindly has given us a good amount of pre-programmed styles. So attribution. So are you writing a nonfiction text and you need to give somebody, credit, a block quote? Again, are you writing nonfiction and you're quoting somebody? Caption. Do you have an image that you need to caption because people need to know what it is? Code block. Are you writing code or are you writing a document about code? Heading, heading 2, title, verse is for writing poetry. You get the idea. Styles, however, like I said, are used for when you want to step out of your normal formatting on a you want something consistent that you want to step out of your normal formatting consistently every time. So say you're going to use, titles every single time for your poems, and each poem is different and you don't want to use the compiling option. Or say, again, you're writing verse. Or you need captions, and captions aren't going to be taken care of by the compiler. These are ways for you to keep your formatting consistent across different subdocuments and still keep your base formatting the same. This is really important because otherwise your Scrivener is going to lose its mind. If you try and change each document to look the same over and over and over again, it will not be consistent. So that is how you use styles in Scrivener. Up next, we're going to talk about tools and helpful features, which is our grab bag section. All right, tools and helpful features. This is going to get a little wild, a little crazy, a little weird, but these are all things that I think are really helpful features of Scrivener that don't really fit under the other things we've talked about so far. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is backup frequency. And we all know how important backing up is. So we're going to go back to the options menu. And you'll see conveniently backup even has its own little icon. So we're going to click that. One thing, if this is not automatically turned on, I don't remember, it's been a while. Turn on automatic backups, please. Your brain and your project and the world will thank you. Down here, you can change how often you can back up. So backup of a project on open, backup a project on close, backup with each manual save, backup before syncing with mobile devices, compress automatic backups as zip files. So this means basically you won't have 5,333 different versions of your project just sitting there in their full, memory hogging glory. It'll make them into smaller files that you can then unzip later if you need them. Using the date in the backup file name. That's probably a really useful feature that I should probably turn on. This tells you how many backup files it'll keep. So you can keep only 10, or only 25, or only 5. I only keep 5, because if I'm going back further than that, we have much bigger problems. Then you're going to want to have where your backups go to. So you can choose where it goes to. Mine just goes to the default. I don't have enough energy or interest, I guess, to choose where it goes specifically. But say you want to put it on your Dropbox or your Dropbox. You can change this and go, okay, I want you to put my backups in my Dropbox in this specific folder, and it'll do it for you. Super handy, right? Okay, so we'll hit apply, and then we'll hit okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is your scratch pad, which is underneath. Where is it underneath? There's so many windows. Where is it? All right, so you're going to go up to Window and Scratchpad. You can also use Alt-Shift-Return. I almost never remember what that means. Scratchpad is basically, all right, I need to do some free thinking, right? Like, I need to think about my character and how she relates to this person. So I'm going to hit, untitled note. I can change it to Mia and Azamir, sure. And down here, I'm going to write, how does Mia feel about Azamir? What do they think of her? Okay, not exactly the most helpful note, but if you had to use it, then you have the ability to import as a subdocument of the project, which is super handy, or you can append it to an already existing document. I find that really helpful. Another thing you can do is you can capture an area of the screen. It's like, say you wanted to include a picture, you can capture an area of the screen. I find this really handy for quick notes and quick jottings. Sort of like if you're brainstorming, I guess would be the best way to put it. This would be my brainstorming area of Scrivener. And you can just delete them. Say, I don't need that stuff. Okay, well, it's deleted. Congratulations to me. So this is a scratch pad. Again, really handy, really useful, and you can change the font formatting where we did our work on setting our baseline format in the previous section. How many of you have gone to create this beautiful text, this wonderful, fantastic, mind-blowing work of genius, and you're like, I don't want to name another character Bobby because I already have 4 Bobbies. Scrivener, conveniently, has writing tools, and they have a name generator. And they allow you to make suggestions. So like male, female, either. They don't have gender neutral necessarily, maybe in the future. You can generate up to 500 names. You can set a forename. You can set a surname. Forenames use initials only. Double-barreled surnames. Attempting alliteration. Like, say everybody in this culture has alliterative names. You can do that. Obscurity level. How weird is this person's name? Or how common? At least according to like human traditions, obviously. In your universe or your place, it might be a very common name. But at least as far as, Finnish names, how obscure would this name be? So let's do female, attempt alliteration, double-barreled surnames. We are not going to generate 250. That's a lot. Let's just generate 8. And obscurity level is going to be relatively low. Generate names. No name lists. Oh, you have to include name lists. I wonder if you can just select all. Yes, you can. Okay. I haven't actually used this tool before, but if you hold down Alt and you click, you can select all of them. So now it's brought up my suggested name lists, and that's super handy. So Alessia, Alan Newton, Kamala Cato Bradley. Like, these are actually pretty good names, right? Like, it's pulling from a relatively wide amount of surnames and first names, or given names. Not bad. And apparently you can also add name lists, which again, I think is pretty cool. So this is a really handy tool if you don't want to drag yourself off to fantasy name generators, which is another useful tool, but not part of this tutorial. Next up, we're going to look at dialogue focus. How am I going to do this? Dialogue focus is the ability with your writing tools to focus on direct speech. Now, the big problem is I don't have any direct speech. So you see my text back here has been blacked out. So like if I say, Johnny said Sam, pass the mustard. You can see there's my dialogue feature. And you can also decrease the fade so you can actually see what the other text actually says, which is helpful. And it'll tell you how many quotes you have in this document. This is really handy if you actually struggle with dialogue or you want to make sure your dialogue is punchy enough. Like, Johnny passed the mustard. Do I need that as a quote, or can I just say, Sam asked Johnny to pass the mustard? Up to you. But this is useful because, you're writing 50,000 words, maybe you're writing 100,000 words, whatever you're writing. That's a lot of words, and you want to be able to look at your dialogue because dialogue is sort of how it is your character's personality made into speech, which is then you making it into text. Again, really important, really useful, I think, as a tool. Okay, we're done with that. Document and session targets. I find this useful because I'm one of those people who likes to gamify things, and I want to make it so that I am the most likely to succeed at what I'm doing, and gamifying is how I do that. So we're going to look at project settings. That's not what I wanted, no. We're going to go to project, and we're going to go to project targets. So my manuscript target. How many words am I looking to get in my manuscript. So say I have, it's going to be 50,000. And say for a session target, I want to do the NaNoWriMo daily minimum, which is 1667. You can see now this will stay. And you can actually choose when it resets, which is helpful, and you can choose your writing days and your draft targets. So one of the things I would recommend is current compile group only, which we'll get into compiling. You can set a deadline, so it'll show you, all right, well, if you want to write 50,000 words, you're starting on November 1st, and you want to finish by, November 30th, it'll show you, oh, well, you need to write 1667 words a day. Useful, right? So we'll hit OK. But you'll see, let's see I add, Johnny looked confused because there was no mustard to be seen. Again, this is terrible writing. I'm making it up on the fly. We go to project targets. You'll see now I have 42 words out of 50,000. It kept my manuscript target and also kept my session target of 17. My session target of 1667, and I've written 17 words of that. So again, I find it useful, especially during NaNoWriMo, because sometimes, you leave, you come back, you leave, you come back. I get up and pace when I'm writing. This will keep track of how many words you've written in a given session. One thing I find that sort of goes along with the idea of project targets that I find helpful is the writing history. Now, you're going to see there's not much of a writing history in this project because it's an example. But this basically tells you how much you've written on what days from the beginning of the document's history all the way to the current day. So it actually will break it down by months for you. So September of 2021. I wrote 59 words, I wrote 40 words, I wrote 13 words. And then October, you can see I wrote 70 words, I wrote 17 words. This way you can sort of track, all right, are there days where I'm just like not doing what I want to be doing? Or are there days where I didn't write as much as I thought I was going to? It'll also tell you words written average per day, where, in draft, elsewhere, total. How many writing days have you had? This is helpful if you're sort of like again, those gamifiers are like, all right, I need to get more efficient with my writing, or I want to just track how much writing I'm doing over a given time. I find this helpful. You may not. You can also change it from words to characters, months to days, months only, days only. Just a helpful little tool. All right, so next up we're going to talk about bookmarks. Bookmarks are documents that you want to be able to get to quickly within your project. So let's delete this. This was my example. So say we're in chapter 1 or chapter 2. And we decide, oh, I really need to get my list of characters. And for some reason you're in chapter 4 of act 4, and it's all scrolled up. Well, I decided that list of characters is something that I really need to be able to access regularly. So what I can do is I can drag and drop my list of characters into here. And that way I could just open it easily. If I just double click on it, it takes me to where that is. So again, if I'm in, chapter 1, I decide I need to go to my character list. It'll take me there into a separate window. You can also bring in external files, which can be really handy. So let's see, NaNoWriMo 2021. One moment. Say I decide I really need to be able to access the picture of Marialta. You can actually bookmark it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is what Marialta looks like for me, for my project. Handy. And again, you can delete, reorganize as you go. But that's what bookmarks are for. They're just handy, quick reference if you don't necessarily want to have them as part of your layout, or if your layout is too busy for you. Okay, so we have 2 more things to cover as far as the grab bag of tools and helpful features. First thing we're going to talk about is the ability to thread track. So what we're going to do for that is we're actually going to go up to our outline. So what we want to do is we want to go to Act 1, and you'll see here I have all of my cards that should have my scene notes in them. So these are general notes to me about what each chapter should do, but you can also then go in and add additional text to them. We've talked about that. One of the things that this allows you, one of the things that Scrivener allows you to do is to add labels to your documents or your subdocuments. And this is really useful if you need to see, all right, well, how often is my like say you have a romance subplot. It's just an easy example. How often is my love interest or my romance subplot occurring within a given act? So say chapter 5 is where your love interest is introduced. So we'll right click on it. We'll go to label, and you'll see here I've already created a romance subplot label. It's easy enough to make your own labels. You can even double click to edit the colors, make default, whatever. But what we're going to do is we're going to just hit OK. We're going to right click, go to label. And we're going to say, all right, I need to label this as a romance subplot. Well, then the romantic subplot pops up again in chapter 9. All right, well, here's another way to add a label. It's down in this corner, but you can't see. That is interesting. We'll just right click on it. There's a little button down in this corner you can't really see. We'll just hit, all right, chapter 9, romance subplot. And chapter 10, the love interest comes in one more time, romance subplot. All right. Well, it's good to know that those 3 chapters of Act 1 are all having to do with the romance subplot. But to make it a visual presentation, you can actually arrange by label. So you'll see here, key cards, this is a little way to determine how to organize your cards in your binder. If you click the Arrange Label button, it'll actually, Arrange by Label, it'll actually show you on colorful lines where in your chapter certain labels are popping up. So you'll see up here, chapter 1, 2, and 3, they don't have anything. So let's add a label to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is my problem child. We'll say it's a problematic writing situation. Boop, right down to the red line, which is the color that we chose for problematic writing. Chapter 3 has nothing. Chapter 4 has nothing. Chapter 5 is romance subplot. You can see based on the color right here. 6 has nothing. 7 has nothing. 8 has nothing. 9 and 10. Oh, look, we have more romance subplot. This can be really helpful if you're not entirely sure sort of the shape of your subplots. If you have a lot of them, it can give you kind of an idea of, all right, okay, so this is actually, happening in, 4 out of 6 of my 4 out of 10 of my chapters. All right, is that too much? Is that too little? In this example, it's only 3 out of 10, but you get the idea. Is that too much? Is that too little? Do I need to be more consistent about it? Like in Act 1 here, if we're doing this as an example, my romance subplot is kind of heavily back-ended. Do I want that much romance subplot so early in the book? Should I wean it off a little bit? It's just a way for you to sort of visually imagine your threads throughout your document. Some people might find it useful, others may not. It's just another feature that they've added to Scrivener 3. All right, the last thing I want to talk about as far as helpful tools is revisions. So, some people will find this useful, others won't. It's okay. What Scrivener gives you the ability to do is actually to revise in your document, like in the same document that you wrote your original in. Now, for me, this wouldn't work because the way that I revise, at least my first revision, is I retype everything. I print out my first draft, I go through it until it looks like a pen exploded on it, and then once I've got an idea of like what I want to change, I retype the whole thing. But if you're not that sort of person and you find in document revisions helpful, they do have a revision mode. And they give you the ability to do 5 revisions. So let's say we're on our first revision. Enter revision mode. You have selected to enter revision mode. While you are in revision mode, any text you type in the editor will use the selected revision color. The text insertion point cursor will also reflect the current revision color. To leave revision mode, select none from the format revision mode. Do not show this message again. You get the idea. The mustard had abruptly left the table. Since when did mustard have legs? You can see this is my revision 1. I'm adding this in. Well, let's say I want to get rid of the it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I delete that. It's not going to show that. But that's because I'm not adding anything. Again, this is another place where screenshots or snapshots, that's the word. Snapshots are going to be useful because, like, what do I think? It's really important to have that quote from Charles Dickens at the beginning of this. This is madness, and I apologize. You can add a screenshot, a snapshot, and that way, if you decide, oh, I don't like what I did in deleting this, it can go back to it. Again, just another really helpful thing, especially if you are a multiple revision kind of person, because it does offer you multiple revision modes. It does give you the opportunity to sort of build your document over time and see sort of like, all right, well, in revision 1, I added this. In revision 2, I added this. And if you decide you want to keep those revisions, you just go to remove current revision color, and it'll make it look like the rest of your text. You can also do that to all of them. So like, say you have multiple revisions in a single document, you can go ahead and remove all of them because you want to keep them. So that's just a useful tool. It may not make its way into your revision process, but it's something I wanted to bring up because I think it can be useful to certain writers. Next up, we're going to talk about possibly one of the most important features of Scrivener, which is the compiler. So stay tuned. All right, we're on our home stretch of our tutorial, the compiler. The compiler is a very helpful tool, particularly if you are a self-published author, because it allows you to export your binder or your manuscript in EPUB formats. So let's get started looking at that. To compile, you go to File and Compile. It's pretty easy in that regard. But then you get all of these options. It's a lot of options. So we're going to go through it. One of the things I find most helpful is that you have the ability to compile your manuscript. You can also your current selection or search results. You can select what parts of your manuscript end up getting compiled. So like, say I only wanted to compile chapter 1 and chapter 2. I can hit Alt to deselect all of it, then go Act 1, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, because that's all I have font for right now. And then you have the option of, all right, well, what am I compiling for? Am I compiling for print? Am I compiling as a PDF? And then you have all of these formatting options. So you have rich text, you have doc, you have fountain screenplay format, you have final draft, you have web pages. You have a lot of options here. Then, in addition to that, you have formats. This can be helpful because it allows you to easily just pick what things are going to look like. So the default looks like this, which is determined by the section layout. Then we can go, all right, well, say I want to do it as a manuscript in Times New Roman. My program has hung up. Please stop. All right, so we're selecting manuscript Times New Roman. Here you'll see where you can assign section layouts. So heading, section. So choose layout for heading documents. I want this as my heading document. This is the format I want for my heading document. And then for sections, I want it to look like chapter. And I hit OK. So you'll see this is how my format will look. So you can also import formats. You can also add your own format. I'm not going to go into that. It gets very messy. Front matter, back matter, all of that is a lot to go into. You can set the metadata, so like authors, forename, surname, subject, company, etc. You can use your options, so whether you want to keep your footnotes, export, inspector stuff, add comments, remove comments, delete struck through text, remove highlighting, remove text color, hyperlinks. And then you can do replacements of words or phrases. This is the most useful thing, particularly like if you are workshopping. It's the ability to export or compile your pieces, like your document, your manuscript into pieces, because no one wants to be handed, 100,000 word manuscript at once unless you're shopping it through book agents or you've been accepted as a pitch during pitch wars. So if you're going to like I said, your workshop, you're only going to want to bring like 2 chapters, and this is an option that allows you to do that. So we'll hit compile. It is preparing. If I want to print it, I could print it. We're not going to print it though. What we're going to do is we're going to actually save it as docx, because why not? So now we'll hit compile. It'll allow me, let's just say, example compilation. Hit OK. And all right, it compiled. Good job. So if I go to, you can't see this because it's off screen, but if I open an example compilation and I drag it over, this is what it looks like. Oop. Too big. One moment. This is what it's going to look like. So example project, that's my title, that's my page number, part 1, part 2, chapter 1. So you can see here it kept the revision color. Part 3, chapter 2. Now, obviously you're going to want to be more specific about how you set up all of your formatting, but this is how compilation works, and I find it to be very helpful in sharing your writing with people and also making sure that everything is made to look how it should. Now, we didn't really talk about the EPUB options. So up here, if you look, EPUB, Mobi, those are the 2 most popular versions. I think they're the only 2 available versions of how you can get your book into mobile, like Kindle or Apple Books. So this is what you're going to use if you are a self-published author and you're looking to go straight from Scrivener to e-publishing. This is what it's really helpful for, because you don't need a separate program. And that's the thing that really sells it, is that you don't need a separate program. So that is a feature I think most people will find helpful if you do choose to go to the self-publishing route. So that's it, basically. That is Scrivener 3 in a nutshell. There are a lot of other things I could go into. Like, you've seen these menus. These menus, there is a lot of menus to go through. But as far as Scrivener 3 changes, and as far as functionality for making the most of your NaNoWriMo experience in Scrivener, I think these are the top tips and tools that I can offer. So what do you think? Will you use Scrivener? If you're on the fence about it, does the discount that you get on it at the end of NaNoWriMo, will that maybe sway you? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.